Hello, everybody, and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, joined once more by Sam for another spoiler discussion. And this week we are, of course, talking The Last of Us, Episode 4, Please Hold My Hand. Don't know where the title comes from, probably a song that I didn't pick up on both viewings.
I didn't even know what the title was. I thought you said, please hold my hand. I was like, no, I can't do that. I've checked every episode title, but not this one.
It's an awkward one. It's an interesting episode to talk about. It's an interesting one, reading text from people, reading it online. But as always, before I start off rude. Sam, how are we doing tonight? I was about to go into the actual comment stuff.
No, that's absolutely fine. But no, I'm doing okay. I'm feeling a little bit particular, like I might be coming down with something, which is fabulous. But I was like, we're going to get through this. We've had great news that the next episode's going to be out on Friday.
Yeah.
We've had Grammys discourse. It's been a very weird couple of days, as usual on the interwebs. But you know, making our way through the S storm, which is.
I thought you were about to say making our way downtown. I was like, Christ, I need to.
Walking fast. No. We'll do that. Maybe on the final episode. Maybe we'll do that.
Yeah. That could work. No spoilers here, people.
I have no idea. It might could work. They might play.
I mean, they did go downtown today, though, didn't they? So
they did, but also that song must have come out just before.
I mean, White Chicks is 2004. When was that song? I mean, Underworld's playing at the cinema. Underworld's playing at the cinema today, so that's where we know.
So realistically, there could be a cassette tape of that song somewhere. We could hear it in the universe, in the show.
We'll find out. People get involved. Let us know. Let us know what 2003/early 2000 songs you want being played in The Last of Us in the next 5 episodes, and comment your thoughts of what you want those songs to be. As we said, this is our weekly spoiler discussion. We go live every Monday, and we talk about the episode that has just aired. Now, obviously, we had the masterpiece that is episode 3 last week, which has been incredible reading about online, discussing with people, ad chat last week, seeing Nick Offerman speak about it online as well, and some of the casts. Potential cinema trips. Thanks, Prince Charles Cinema, for teasing something. So it's been a pretty good week to be a Last of Us fan. And let's be blunt, folks. We need a bit of a come down from episode 3. So this is going to be a short episode today. Obviously, it was the shortest episode of the series so far. It was 43 minutes. So you can tell from that we're not going to be diving into too much. However, as you said earlier, Sam, the next episode, we'll come to a delightful surprise that it's going to air on Friday night instead. Sky have confirmed they will do the same thing in the UK. So if you are excited for episode 5, Sky are going to air it at 2 a.m., UK broadcast 2 a.m., in sync with America to avoid, of course, the Super Bowl, which is this Sunday. Just giving you all a PTA. We will still be live on Monday night. We'll give you the weekend to watch it. Episode 5, just off the top of my head, is one of the best ones from the bat. It's a great... You know what made me really upset? Not upset. I'd love if these were Friday nights. I'm always awake at like 2 a.m. on a Saturday, so I'd be able to watch it live.
Yeah.
Monday, awkward timing.
I will say, I mean, something that actually helped was was Pedro Pascal doing Saturday Night Live this past weekend as well. I don't know if you saw any of it, but he was.
I've not seen the whole episode. I've seen a few of the sketches.
Did you see the Super Mario? Yes, because that's the most Last of Us related. So
it's probably the highest budget SNL sketch they've ever done.
It really is. Like, I was very impressed, actually.
And they get like a 2-week turnaround normally when they do this stuff. Like they work.
Well, I mean, they managed to do a bloody China balloon sketch as the cold open for the show, and that happened 24 hours before. So I mean, some things are really quick turnaround, but you would have had to have had a bit of notice for the effects,
CGI team, green screens, everything.
Nintendo to let you in. I don't know. Comment below your SNL Pedro Pascal thoughts, because it is great when you get actors that do it and are genuinely funny. That's one of the actual real talents of SNL, is finding out which actors are funny and which ones aren't. And more often than not, you'll work that out by the end of their opening monologue. But also, if you want to follow us for more stuff, go get us on our social medias, Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, a link to Redbubble in the description. There's been a weird new Instagram update. It's not letting me post photos anymore, like proper as the thumbnail. So we'll figure something out there, which is really annoying. And it made me annoyed last night trying to get a post sorted. But aside from that, as we said, we're talking episode 4 of The Last of Us. Very quickly, so I'm not to put you on the spot. You can all check out our episode from last week. Just your thoughts on episode 3, very quickly. I mean, I talked a lot last week, but it was very good. One of the best episodes of television I've seen in a while. As someone who's gay, it hit me
many times over. And also just the reaction has been kind of the thing that I've enjoyed the most. And of course, there's people who didn't like it for various reasons, whether it was, fine critique or rubbish anecdotes that meant nothing. I guess it's up to the person who reads it to decide. But I mean, there's people that I know who watched the episode or is now thinking of watching the show because of what they've heard about it, because of not just the last episode, but the last 3 episodes. Someone who I work with is also gay, and he said that he doesn't usually cry at shows, but he did at the last episode. And yes, I mean, I think it's always great when you're into something and you know on a certain level how big it is or within certain circles, but then you kind of hear it in your everyday. And I feel like The Last of Us is like a Game of Thrones in terms of, you will be talking about the episode if everyone's watched it at the same time. The thing is with things like this, like people will say, I watched it on the Monday, or they're like, I'm gonna wait until the weekend, or we'll wait till when I'm free in the week to do it. So it's one of those weird things where it is weekly, but people are just watching it as and when they can. But it does cause for some good conversations, and I've liked introducing it to people as well, like just telling people a little bit about what The Last of Us is and why it works, and why, even though it's a similar type of show, a similar type of story, why it takes it to the next level. And we've still got half a season to go. So, I'm based on what George has said, what you've said, there's a lot of good stuff to come.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a phenomenal series so far, and I think 3 was really that big moment of this is going. HBO's got this incredible game. They're doing a great job adapting it. Now we're gonna not do our own thing. Now we're gonna just go to a different direction for one episode, and we're going to create one of the best episodes of individual TV, certainly of recent memory, that will be spoken about for years to come. And then here we have episode 4 getting back on track for those that were crying and complaining, hiding behind the, it was filler. It wasn't. It really wasn't filler because of that letter. I don't need to explain it. But episode 3 discussion, please do check that out. We've got Chaz in the comments. A good episode setting up what's to come. Craig Mazin did his game. It's great with the magazine scene being line for line. And I believe the episode title is taken from the Hank Williams song In the Truck. Yes, I did think it could be the music center. Thank you for confirming that. It would make sense. That's a couple. Shame that we didn't get any episodes called Never Let You Down. But that's... I think I've even just said the song wrong, so I'm going to move on from getting music wrong, as I always seem to do. But ever so quickly, episode 4. So we've got 2 big talking points. And as I said, it's not like last week. We don't have a scene-for-scene breakdown as such, but we're going to kick off with Joel and Ellie, the car journey and being in the woods. We'll follow Chaz's comments. The magazine scene making its way in. This is something, again, one of the, it's, and I say this every week and people are bored of probably me saying it, but it is a blessing to watch these shows early. But when you're binging it, you really miss out on the week-to-week gap and discussion points and thinking what could happen, what will happen, what could happen. To me, I had minutes in between episodes, which is a personal choice. But you have to get them done to meet deadlines and whatnot. And everyone was talking about the magazine scene over the last week. Like, is the magazine scene going to be in it? I was like, just wait a week. Wait a week. Like, please wait. It's not. Just have a bit of patience. And I loved the magazine scene's great, but the bit that I love the most is the jump cut of her being awake to them being tired, which is really stupid.
I love that.
But that's a game moment. It's not like that. When I was replaying the game, I forgot that I was in the game. And it's like there's moments of comedic relief and Craig Mazin on script duty, who we know has done an unbelievable job of the series so far. I love the fact that, again, adaptation doesn't mean copy. That they're choosing to include certain things, and they're choosing, whether it's line by line or not line by line, there are certain things that I think you get the chance to do it. A big thing in today is the joke book, which, if anyone's tried to get that platinum trophy, it means you've sat through every single joke in Left Behind. And there's a lot of jokes. There's a lot of times you have to press triangle. But the way that they're, not faithfully approaching the game, but it's not done to copy the game. I feel like it's done as a whole, just this as a generalization of dialogue from the game to the series. it's done out of respect. It's like going from page to book. From page to screen. Sorry, that's really stupid. It's been one of them weeks. It's only Monday.
Yeah, I think you need to at this stage of it, especially because of how not heavy last week was, but because of how really last week for Joel and Ellie was kind of getting past Tess, and now it's kind of like, right, okay, let's work on the relationships, and it's like, right, what do we have that works from the game that's gonna really fit nicely here? I'll give my 2 cents about the magazine. I wasn't like gasping for air for it. I wasn't like, we need this now, and how dare they not include it in the last episode. I thought it was a really weird thing that would be what people focus on, actually. But then when it came up this episode, I literally went, yay! and then she threw it out the window, and I was like, oh, rest in peace, gay porno mag. And then I just started to think of all the models that were in the magazine. I'm like, oh, I wonder if any of them survived. And just like stupid things like that.
No, because it raises a good question. Not to fun about models, but and listen, I've never wanted to do this. Like, imagine if there is an apocalypse. I wonder what celebrities would survive and what some that would. Like, I don't want to be like. I guess Zombieland did it right with Bill Murray.
And was it This Is the End, or what's the one?
This Is the End. It's incredible.
Yeah,
I know.
And
okay. No, This Is the End is the Franco Rogan one.
Yeah, it's
where everyone played themselves. Which The World's End is the Simon Pegg Frost.
Oh yeah. No, it is the James Franco one because Emma Watson appears, and I'm just like, all right, great, you're great. Like,
I know people can't say as much, but This Is the End to me is still one of the best comedies of the last 20 years. It is unbelievably funny. And it holds up. I remember watching it during COVID, and it was still funny. But it's more just them lot, like that group of friends. I know they don't make films anymore for obvious reasons as to why. But it's one of them. Like, when they got it right with that film, perfect. It's 10 years old this year. That's going to make me feel really old. God, that's even more of a throwback because The Last of Us came out, and I remember it coming out around the time The Last of Us. Dear me. Sorry, I'm getting all nostalgic.
We're gonna get George emotional. Sorry, I'll let's go away from the gay porno magazine. But it was great that they put that in, and there's some great dialogue in that.
Yes.
But yeah, the joke book. When it came out, and I was like, oh no, I feel like these are going to be like so cringy. It's not even going to be like good. Like, I'm going to be like, oh. But it is heartwarming to see the evolution of the joke book in this one episode, and just see what it does. Like, Joel is so over it immediately, and then he just starts to open the heart a little bit, and then he is loving it. I mean, is it the diarrhea show? It made me laugh, and I'm like, this is so stupid. Like, why is it making me laugh? But no, it's choosing what you put into the show. I mean, you do have a time limit, and there is certain things that don't work. It doesn't translate so easily. Something like that, where people are saying bad jokes. I mean, I'm pretty sure everyone knows a person who has been that person, or you've been the other person to actually say the jokes. That type of humor. So it's just nice to have that and just get a bit of them road tripping it. I think that's the other thing. I know you mentioned the jump cut, which I loved as well, from Ellie awake to Ellie asleep, and that's another really relatable thing that I think every kid has been like that. When you've been in a car when you're younger and you're driving somewhere far, and you're like, oh, it's gonna take ages, and you mess around just like on like a games console, like a Game Boy, or do crosswords, whatever, and then suddenly you're just asleep, and then it's like, where are we? How long is it going to take? But it's just, it's a funny visual, and it helps just with the passage of time as well. But then I did get this fear when they parked in the woods. I was like, oh, like, is this gonna be the moment where the bubble bursts? I mean, I knew what happened. I knew what could happen anyway, and what happened in the game, but whether or not they would replicate, I wasn't totally sure. And I think maybe shows like The Walking Dead have just made me frightened of, like, zombies are going to be anywhere and everywhere. But maybe it does make sense that in this show, that infected are only in certain areas, or they aren't just going to be like en masse across America, which is kind of what The Walking Dead feels like. So I mean, I try not to compare too much, but it is interesting as this series develops to really kind of see what The Walking Dead did and how far they changed things. And I think that makes me appreciate The Walking Dead to an extent, but it really makes me appreciate what these guys are doing.
Yeah, it's a really good point there, because I was watching it with Dad tonight. So obviously, as I said, I saw it a few weeks ago, and I was really excited to rewatch episodes 4 and 5. And obviously, we sat down to watch it tonight. I forgot it was shorter. So obviously, we sat down. It was done quite quick, and when they sit down in the forest, you get the shot of them looking up. And my dad's sort of like, "Well, you're not gonna sit in the forest outside and be all right, are you?" And I was like, "Oh, because I know where the episode's going, and even if I hadn't seen it already, I would know where the episode is going. We know what storyline we're going to get to next." And it was really intriguing that it suddenly felt like there was tension in that scene, that someone was going to turn up. And obviously they didn't. But as you said, the joke book story is something I didn't really appreciate watching it a few weeks ago. It's only playing the game again. And it's not even that much to do with the game. It's that they use it to develop their relationship within this episode today. That when we spoke a few weeks ago, I think on episode 1, I spoke quite a bit on Bella Ramsey's performance. I really enjoyed it, and it will develop over time over the coming weeks. And the next couple of weeks are integral to that. And I think today did a phenomenal job at really starting to build the chemistry, because if anyone's seen them in real life, obviously Pedro and Bella, they've had amazing chemistry on interviews, on red carpets. I know there's a bit of a trend going around at the moment of people sharing the couples with the best chemistry on red carpets, which is a really weird thing for social media to be pushing. I think it's because there was a premiere for a rom-com and everyone looked uncomfortable. Then you get like Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, who everyone thinks are together, that sort of thing. And it's really interesting that when you bring that into TV as well. And I just love these two in this. I love the joke book stuff. And even at nighttime, like Joel can't go to sleep. Like that one shot of it cuts to him watching over with the gun. And it just shows that he does care. And even though he made the point of calling it cargo at the start of the episode, which you can see hurts her a bit.
Yeah.
We know deep down, he's a softie on the inside, and we're going to get it out of him, and rightfully so as well. But what were your thoughts on their, I guess, as a whole heading into today? What were your thoughts on the chemistry, and did that change for you at least today?
Yeah, I think we are used to kind of the friction at this point, and I know people have complained, especially mostly in the last episode, about not having enough of them. And I think because a lot of them are the ones who played the games, so they know the relationship of Joel and Ellie. And I think, and this is just a real broad thought, just that, they're excited. People are excited to see what the relationship becomes, because they know it becomes something really great and beautiful. And when you don't have that, it's difficult to see. You don't really want that period of time where there's friction and tension, that there's still distrust between them. You want them to have that emotional moment, and that you want them to get on and banter. And even though they do have banter here, it's not the same. And it still feels like very much like he sees her as like one thing, and she's trying way more than he is, and that's difficult for people to really comprehend and see. I think especially because they played the game and seen what happens. So it's nice to finally kind of get some development. I'm not finally get development, that's the wrong thing, but to see more of it.
I see what you mean.
It's to see more of it, and to actually see this relationship really take center stage. It's difficult when you have someone like Tess who's there, who's really the buffer and everything. And then there was last week, and then there's now. And I think it's something like a journey as well. Once you actually start doing things together, and you've got to, do all the daily stuff, and especially in this world that they're in, it's easier for those kind of walls to come down. And so I think when you said about what your dad said and about how I felt about this kind of tension in that scene in the forest, it's like, going to sleep in the woods. It's that thing where Joel is cautious and then stays awake, and then it really does juxtapose with the ending where they're both chilling and they're not paying attention, which then leads to someone actually finding them, which is just totally ironic. But it is what it is. And I like that thing where it's like, okay, well, you'll still have each other's backs, but it might actually be the wrong thing to do at that particular moment. But yeah, all the pre-Kansas City stuff was just nice to get that relationship extension.
Yeah, absolutely. We're just going to got a couple of comments. We've got Ian watching from Australia. Fair play for being up at that time in the morning. And Pedro's been great so far, but Bella saw in episode 4 that doing John and Ellie justice. This is it. I love what you said there, Sam, that, you know, you really just on. We haven't had time with them alone as a duo. You know, we had one scene at the end of episode 2, one scene at the end of episode 3, and today. And I think this is a big one in pushing that. And I guess as well, the psychology of the gamers as well, that we know, as you said, we know what their relationship becomes by the end of the series, by the end of the end of the first game, the end of the second game, all that sort of stuff. And people need to remember that when you first play the game, that relationship doesn't exist either. It gets developed. There are story arcs that build that, and the one thing The Last of Us does a great job of doing is taking big gaps in between, which in turn do development. One thing I remember, I'm not going to jump too far ahead with the games comparisons, but you finish one story arc and then it cuts to another season. Obviously, if you played the game, you know which one that is. And in between that, you know loads of stuff's happened and they've already moved forward. So the series can't do it as easy as that, but it can certainly do its best. And I think we're starting to get this now. And what kind of makes it fascinating for this episode, they're not being chased by infected. They're not being chased by clickers. The enemy are humans. And this is kind of, because I've not seen The Walking Dead, I know a lot of the story plots and a lot of the subplots. I know, you know, certain seasons are set in certain locations. But the one thing The Last of Us has always been about, the core of it is survival. And the showrunners will tell you that the message of the series, of the game, of everything is love, which it is. And what I love that this series is doing so far is that we haven't just had the same first 2 episodes like on loop so far, that we had something so wildly different in 3 that I don't think anybody watching heading into episode could have possibly known that's what episode 3 was going to be about. Oh, that's how episode 3 was going to go. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall for the writing process and when the actors were turning, when the actors were reading the scripts up, because that was unbelievable. And with episode 4, you know, with the introduction of Kathleen as well, we're getting to see, here are some villains that are going to be the humans. And I love this concept that I know they don't dive into it as much at the moment. It's something you're going to talk about in episode 5, so I'm not going to obviously spoil anything, but they have took out Fedra. You know, it begins with the doctor locked up who had betrayed other people. And we're getting to see this side, like what the game did of the Ravagers. We're getting to see an isolated area where there is no law and government. The law and order is the people that have overthrown them. And not to get into some like French revolt discussion or something, but, you know, a spray paint on the side of the cars. I don't think it says "We the People." I'm thinking of a wrestling thing there. But it's really interesting that for the episode, we're going to start to develop Joel and Ellie more. We're going to have the intrinsic focus be other humans, and to see how much worse off you can be as a species with something like this. So I'm going to have to be really careful not to talk about episode 5, because they are a beautiful double episode with each other. Just as my preview for you all to watch it on Friday and Saturday is an unbelievable 2-story episode arc. But this is a really, really, really smart episode, and I don't think people are going to get the chance to not appreciate this until next week, because we are talking it contextually. We're talking at the time of today, but this is subtly doing all the character development ready for what happens next week. And I think where I'm kind of talking with the Kansas City stuff, I love the idea that, how do I say? I don't want to say world building. I just love the idea that we're just not spending an hour with them driving in a car, that some humans are going to try and get a car chase and fight them. They have to dive into this city center. They have to then, you know, we obviously, if you played the game, you'll know about the standoff with the car, having to kill the people, obviously done very differently. But that's building Joel and Ellie's relationship further, and for Ellie to, you know, eventually ask on the stairs, have you actually killed innocent people then? And he can't answer it. I love what this episode has done. And I think there's a lot of things there that's going to come into play at the later part of the series, like what happens within the game for those that understand that there are, you know, you build up a relationship for big moments to happen later on. And I feel like I'm waffling. I'm scared I'm going to say something I shouldn't. So, Sam, just over to you. Just your initial thoughts on Kansas City and the concept of the Ravagers as the villains.
I think it's interesting to have to. It is world building. I mean, let's say it how it is, because you get that information last week, and when we're introduced to Frank, and he says that the Baltimore QZ is gone. Yeah. And we've already seen the Boston QZ, and we can see that the Kansas City QZ is gone as well. So I think it's interesting in that respect to just kind of see that, Fedra, as much as they may have been in control at one time or another, are really not what they were, and they probably are just in their own pockets of, okay, we're handling this thing, we don't know what has happened elsewhere, but we've got to focus on us. And it kind of leads me to think that ultimately one day Fedra's not going to exist at all anymore, and it is just going to be people surviving in their groups of whatever. So I think that's one thing. I think to have the other thing, which I think is key to The Last of Us, and I think is a key part of many post-apocalyptic pieces of media, is that there's this conversation about good versus evil and who's right and who's wrong. And almost every single time the lines are blurred, you can't say for certain that someone is good or someone's evil, that someone didn't deserve that to happen to them or someone did. In the game, that's important, and I think it's probably even more important in the second game as well, which obviously I won't go into, but I think anyone who has played the second game can understand. I mean, they may not, but they may understand the sense of morality and, oh, well, from a certain point of view, that was the right thing to do, or that was necessary to happen. And so I think in terms of the Joel and Ellie relationship, that's a really interesting thing to have on from Joel about what has he done? What do we not know that he's done that has been so wrong? Ellie's doing something today in this episode that's for maybe not the first time, but it's one of the first times in which she's attacking someone. And yes, it was for good, but it's ultimately then someone who was begging to not be killed, but he had to be killed. Had to be. So it's I love that whole dynamic of what that does to relationships, and I think it's just a great point to have some kind of backstory, or just diving into other characters, maybe ones that are either not as important in the game or brand new ones for the show, to make a group seem more human is another interesting thing, because there's so many faceless people that you just take out in the game. I think especially in this portion as well. So I'm intrigued about what they're going to do with these characters and how it's going to be resolved, because we knew the characters that were going to have personalities, who were going to be a focus, but there are additional characters here too. And really the Melanie Linsky character is the one where I really want to know more, because I want to know how she got there. And I love her anyway. I think she's so good, and she's so funny. To see her in such a dramatic role, and such a serious role, I mean, is for me kind of something that I want to see more of her. And I'm hoping that we do get a lot more of her in the next episode. But she's ruthless, and I want to know, how did that happen, and why is she the leader here? What has she done to gain that respect? And I want to see it, because I want to be like, oh yeah, I respect her too. But yeah, I love the changes, and then of course we get the car scene, and the trap, and then going into the shop. But it's that part of the game is, really important. So it's great that that's been able to translate over into the show, and it made for some tense moments once again.
Yeah, the Kathleen stuff I love, because, as you said, when you play that part of the game, and I'm not going to talk about future episodes, this is the game now. You do all this stuff in Kansas City, you escape with Sam and Henry, and then you're in the sewers, and then you're back with Ravagers again. And I keep calling them Ravagers. They are Ravagers, aren't they?
Raiders. Is it
Raiders? Sorry, Ravagers is Bloody Guardians of the Galaxy. Sorry, I knew I was saying something wrong. And this is kind of it, that there's no hierarchy to that story in the game. Whereas this, you introduce Kathleen before you introduce anybody else. And you're wondering, who's she talking to this doctor? Who's Henry? Who's this? Why is she talking? Who's her brother that she's just mentioned? And it's this really interesting scene to, as you said, to introduce this character who commands respect. Not because she's got the gun and the doctor doesn't, because you can tell something has happened. There's something about her performance where this is a complimentary term. Kathleen looks so normal. She doesn't look like she's been beat up like Anna Torf, who's amazing as Tess. She doesn't look like she's psychotic in the mind, like many others would. No insane bags under the eyes. The actual costume for her just looks like a normal person, and I think it works really well. And kind of, we've got a comment from Chaz I'm going to bring up in a moment as well, which is another big thing. We put it as a thumbnail. Jeffrey Pierce making the jump from the game to the series as well. Of course, did the motion capture voice of Tommy in the game, and he's playing Perry, and this is the right-hand man. I love this casting because obviously, everybody, we know that Ashley's going to be in it. We know that we've already seen everyone. Well, we haven't seen everyone. Trailers, we've seen who's going to be in it at certain points. And the Jeffrey Pierce one, I feel like, I don't want to say it was kept quiet. I just don't think anyone maybe knew what he looked like. That's sounding disrespectful. That he looks like this right-hand man, like insane beard, great hair, warrior, not warrior, but like, you tell that's the guy that's going to be in charge of these guys. Like, you don't want to fuck with him. Every episode you want to fuck with, not him. But the fact that he is taking orders from Kathleen, who looks so normal, who isn't wearing army uniform, who's just in a coat, it makes you think, because what you said, something's happened, and I want to know what that is. I want to know what happened. Why is she where she is? How did they get to this point? How did they beat Fedra? And, they even set something beautiful. Well, I said set something beautiful up. We even have a bit of mystery in the air with that underground thing that was sort of shaking to a point, which, you see the fear in both of them when the rocks start moving. So it's a really good way to start setting things up. And I think the show, I don't want to say hasn't had the chance today because we're only 4 episodes in, but this certainly feels like we're going to be in a different story arc to what we've already had. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I guess, last week was an hour and 20 minutes. This week's been 43 minutes. It's, almost half of that. And it does sort of keep building next week. And that's why we don't have as much to deep dive into this week, because this is really developing scenarios, developing characters, ready for something to sort of pop off. We've got Chaz, and great to see Jeffrey Pearson. And this is kind of it, that what I love that this series is doing, it's when you say, I mentioned earlier, the series is paying respect for the game. Bringing in these people that have these roles within the game is important to that. I understand that, you might want every person to cameo, but when we look at, the reaction to Joel being cast in the show, we look at the reaction to Ellie being cast in the show, Marlene making the jump over as well, which was great that we were able to get the same actress for that, because we know that not everybody's able to play their counterparts when they do these jumps. The Jeffrey Pearson story, because I forget how much he sounds like Tommy naturally as well, whether it's a voice for his character, but it's just a really, to me, nice way of them sort of, it's a sign of respect. And I like the game's doing it, rather than say, you know what, we're above all of you voice actors. We're not going to have any of you in it. We're The Last of Us on HBO. We do our own thing. It feels like a collaborative process. And I think for what The Last of Us has done as a game, as a series, as an IP, I think they deserve the chance to be in live action. And I kind of wonder what your thoughts are on that, just as a generalization for all of these other characters that popped up. I know we've not seen 2 of the other characters yet.
There's 2 very strong sides to this. There's people who completely understand that voice actors are voice actors, and occasionally some of them do both. There's people who do voice actors and acting to camera, and then there's others who just do voice acting. So sometimes it's understandable when people aren't brought over to anything, and I think that's completely fair. But then there's other people who can't separate actor and character, and I can understand that. If for certain characters, fictional characters, it's very difficult for me to go, oh, that is separate, because you just see them as one and the same. And I know there was a lot of well, I'd say a lot of backlash, but I saw a lot of backlash against, Rosario Dawson being Ahsoka in Star Wars, for example. That was very much like she can't be that. There's only one actress who can play Ahsoka, and it's not Rosario. So yeah. I know backlash like that, and but it's unfair to the actors. They've auditioned or tried for to be cast, in a role for a job. That's it. But sometimes I do think it's unfair to the voice actors. I think, especially if they do actually do acting, because they are actors, and it means that they can do something. And clearly, when it's someone who can do an assortment of voices, they might be playing someone who is completely different to them, and that's completely fair. Where it's like, that's not going to work. But I like this kind of middle ground where it's like, okay, well, you're not playing who you were playing. However, there is a role that we do think you'd be good for. I'm going to presume that none of the game actors had to audition for their roles. They may have had to, but I'm going to presume not. And I think that's a nice way to just kind of say, look, everyone's welcome here. This is not we're not just doing this and that's it. We're not ignoring anything. There's some people who will not see that gesture and will just say, oh, well, they're not playing those roles, so that's not it. But I think those people need to actually just think a bit more about it, because it's just not so black and white like that. But no, I have no problem, and I've got to be honest. I'm ready for I think I've been so mentally prepared for Troy coming over that I kind of didn't even think about Tommy's actor. I can't remember his name. What's he called again?
Jeffrey Pierce.
Jeffrey Pierce. And so I actually did not know who he was in this episode. And so I watched Inside episode 4 on YouTube, and I was like, oh yeah, of course. But because I've been waiting to see Troy, it didn't even come to mind. Oh yeah, of course he could be in it, and of course he could be playing another character as well. There's a nice fact, he did really well. Nothing would make me go, oh well, he's a voice actor and he can't do this. And you're right, he did have great hair, and I am again interested to see what his backstory is if we get it, and a little bit more of the dynamic, because I think it's really interesting. And I think that's the awful thing about this show, is that we keep meeting interesting people and we know we're not going to spend that much time with them because we are just going to be going right through from story to story following Ellie and Joel. So I really hope the next episode does give us a little bit more on them. But overall, I have no issue with it. As long as you're a good actor, absolutely fine.
And that's kind of it. And I think a big thing of this is, I'm glad you brought the Ahsoka Tano one, because I think that's probably the most high profile of these that's probably ever been done. And I don't want to say it's the first, it will never be the last, but certainly high profile is the right term. And certainly with Ahsoka's legacy as a voice actor, and fundamentally, my opinion on it is you cast the best person for the role. Doesn't matter if it's live action, voice work, what the medium you're working on, you cast the best person for that role. And the Ahsoka stuff fascinates me, because I don't want to sort of be one of them like hearsay things, but I follow a lot of autograph groups. I've been involved in the autograph collecting community for a while, and when you were seeing posts that stuff was refused to be signed because it was signed by Rosario Dawson, and it made me sort of sit there and think, that to me disrupts legacy. Now that's now out of the water. That doesn't happen anymore. But that was happening when the news first came through that Ash Exxon wouldn't sign stuff that Rosario Dawson does, which I found fascinating. Not proven, not said by word, but at events it was the team would say that can't be signed, I'm afraid. And I'm so glad The Last of Us has not done any of that, because that's ridiculous. But when you've got Neil Druckmann involved from the get-go, on the ground up, as you said, I doubt many of that. I think you're right. I think they probably didn't want to audition any of the cast, but they probably took into consideration that, okay, here's some characters here. Who could we get that's worked with us a lot over the years? And obviously, Troy Baker, you can see him in the trailer. Ashley has obviously got a role. Some people know it, some people don't. You can see that in the trailer as well. But the Jeffrey Pierce one's, I think, a really nice touch, because Tommy
isn't necessarily in the game as much or in the series as much, people would forget about the character. And I think certainly it's one that there is a performance there. And when you make that jump to live action, I just think it's a really like respectful thing to do. Like, you've helped contribute to one of the best games ever made in history. We'd like to get you a role in the series. We might not know the size or the scale of the role, but for this, certainly to be like the right hand man of a antagonist for an episode arc, that's a great thing to do. And as you said, he is exciting, and there's something in the horizon that we want to learn about these characters, and we just don't know yet. So that's something that I wanted to say. Again, I can't talk too much about that, and it would be amazing if anyone got the chance to speak to Jeffrey Pierce about it, and all the individual cast that have been involved. I'd love to know what those conversations are like, how the phone calls came in, like, because everyone knew they were doing a series, getting into a role. And kind of a benefit of the series as well is if this was a film, it'd just be a cameo there and then. It would never have been anything else.
Yeah.
But to get it in a series, you get to give them a role. You get Perry. It's an original character. I think it's great, and it's a really big thing. And that's why I made it the thumbnail tonight. No disrespect to Kathleen, because I loved her in this, and I can't wait for people to see more of her. But it does set up what is a very interesting arc, and kind of in line with that. As I said, there's not necessarily a lot of things to talk about that happened, but if we talk about the ending as such, unless you think I'm jumping too far ahead.
No, I guess we've mentioned the Doctor, someone who seems like a fairly nice person, getting interrogated and then brutally murdered. Which
cold-blooded outside of the container.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that was when you go, okay, this woman means business. What's she doing? And then you wonder who's Henry? What's going on here? And he keeps mentioning Henry and what's he done to make everyone go ballistic and try and find them. Why do these people think that Joel and Ellie are connected? Of course, and I think we've said it every week. We've mentioned Sam and Henry anyway, but we knew they would be coming into this. But it's again nice to see the mystery, and we get the mystery of who these people are. You see the colored pictures of superheroes in crayon. Like what's how many people could there be? Or he's going to look after Sam. He needs Sam, whatever. All that stuff, and then you get, like you said earlier, that go through the door, and there's kind of the Earth's a mess. What's underground, what's happening down there.
Yeah.
All these things it's all these setups which make for what I'm hoping is going to be a really exciting episode 5. This was the time to kind of have more of those conversations between characters and learn more about the world outside of what we've already got. But yeah, leading into the ending, we've got, again, it's just Ellie and Joel finally getting closer, and you're seeing it happen. And then learning more about what Joel does to survive, putting glass near the door, which is just a nice detail about, okay, different things that you would do. Again, The Walking Dead did a thing where it's like, you have pans and things that make sound on strings that are tied to trees, so that when they're outside, if anyone walks into them, they'll know. So it's that thing of utilizing what you've got around you. Yeah.
I mean, that ending, the glass is great, because we're getting more into the mystery of Joel, that Ellie's worked out that he's not got the best of hearing in one of his ears. And the reason why. Oh, we've got a couple more comments coming in there, which I'd love to bring up. Chaz, I really like the cliffhanger. The gamers who know the characters, and the non-gamers is a clever introduction. Carl, evening, great episode again. Carl, I had a lovely time in America. I'm just going to say that now. And I'm glad that you are back, and I'm glad you're keeping up to The Last of Us as well. Actually, Carl, sorry to put you on the spot. Comment: did you get to watch episode 3 like at a human time over, though? Did you wait till you got back home? Because I remember when Game of Thrones came out in America. Sorry to go off tangent. I got to watch episode 1 of the final season at 9:00 in the evening on the airtime. And it was the weirdest experience in my life, because I'd spent so many years watching it at 2 a.m. So I'd be so curious about that. That's so weird that people go to America. I'm like, yeah, I'm not, how was your holiday like? how was your TV experience?
You watched that film 3 months earlier because of silly things like that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's those questions we want to ask, and the glass stuff I loved because it is quite smart. They'd be screwed if there was a clicker behind them, and it had the click in the glass. And this is what I love that.
Or if you're Bruce Willis in Die Hard.
Yeah, and this is it. And the big focus me is that the villains to watch out for, they're not zombies. We're not watching out for zombies this week. We're watching out for people, because people will do the more damage, and especially based off Kathleen, from what we can work out, something big happened to her. We're going to find out what it is. We're going to find out. Henry was brought up a lot as well. I loved that the introduction to Henry in this episode, before we even get to the final shot, Henry's been built up. They're all after Henry. What's Henry done to these people? Why is he on a list? Why does she need him specifically? And then, as you said, when we get to the superhero stuff on the walls, the stuff upstairs, I kind of love this because she knows who Sam is immediately either. She's not, okay, she's with Sam. He'll never let Sam starve. So it sets up, and it sort of bigs them up in theory for what is going to happen next. And the cliffhanger itself, Joel being woke up with the whole hearing problem. He's back on the wrong side again. Henry with the gun. Sam with the gun, who we of course know has got his superhero face paint on, which I absolutely love.
I loved that so much. I really did.
And I'm not going to say it about Sam, but if anyone followed the casting announcement last year, there is a change to Sam in this. I won't say what it is in case people don't know. It's nothing to do with source material or anything like that. But there's a really cool change to Sam. And I said, if anyone remembers the casting, so it was a really big deal at the time. It adds a completely different dynamic to what might happen in the next week. Because of course we get Sam ending it with the shush and the gun pointing, which is fade to back, come back next week, but not next week because it's going to be Super Bowl Sunday, so come back on Friday night. I've spent weeks hyping up the Sam and Henry stuff, and I'm not going to talk about the game. Please don't comment game spoilers, people. I know everyone's been polite over the last few weeks on the chat, so I appreciate that. But I am one of the joys of watching this is my dad at the moment, who's never played the game, and today, when they were doing the shootout in the car, he was like, I bet that's one of the levels from the game. And I was like, yeah. And it's interesting. It's someone that's not a gamer starting to work out the gaming narratives now. The doors being pulled away so that you can get through Ellie climbing up. It's really interesting watching people that haven't watched the game. And I'm so excited to watch episode 5 with him. Because it's what Chaz has put. It's a clever introduction for the non-gamers. Because are they introducing them as heroes? Are they introducing them as villains? We don't know, but what we do know is that Kathleen and her crew are after Henry, and they think Pedro, Pascal, and Ellie are working with Henry, which they're not. So it's going to add a spicy dynamic to the next episode. But kind of, Sam, your thoughts, again, what are you looking forward to the next episode? Because I know I've hyped up you a bit personally, but what do you think could happen? What do you think we will see? Because the Sam and Henry arc, I think. When this series, before this was a series, when it was first being spoken about being a film, I was really nervous saying, what are you going to cut out to make it a 2-hour film? And for me, Sam and Henry's storyline is the most fundamental relationship outside of Joel and Ellie, which I'll talk about more next week. But I'm curious, what are you looking forward to the next episode before we round out the final thoughts?
Definitely just seeing the relationship of Sam and Henry and just who they are as people, because in this medium we've not seen any of them apart from that final shot. So I am intrigued about what they are going to bring over from the game, what they're going to do differently for TV. The dynamics of a 4-person group, which in the game felt wonderful because it was fantastic. I love it when there is a bigger group. It gives a sense of everyone's in this together and we're all looking for the same goal. Is that still going to be the case here? I know one thing that I was kind of, when I saw it in this episode, I was like, oh my god, was the truck in going past, and in the game that truck is it's like a mini boss essentially, because it just follows you everywhere. And so, you see glimpses of vehicles and that truck in this episode. And I'm wondering if there's going to be more of that. I feel like bear in mind, having not seen anything, really only seen the next week trailer or on Friday trailer, is that it will be kind of like cat and mouse, just a chase, following people after each other. Most likely, I'm pretty positive running into Infected. I mean, we have had 2 full episodes where they've not had center stage. It's time for them to come back into it. We mentioned last week, or we mentioned off camera, I can't remember, about kind of those ebbs and flows when it comes to who is on screen, and that you'll have just your characters that you were following, then other human characters, and then Infected, and then you'll go back, and that's kind of how it is in the game. So I feel like we're at that point where we're ready for Infected to come back into it, and just more backstory about this group of raiders, and whether they will make it out of this alive, because I'm pretty certain that Joel and Ellie are good. I would be shocked if either of them weren't, but everyone else, it's a TV show. It's not the game. Anything could happen, really. I know they're probably going to take just the main things of this, but really everything else is wide open. So I'm also looking forward to more action. I don't think we've not had such heavy action since the first episode's pre-title sequence, really, the flashback to 2003. So we've got glimpses of it with this shootout that happened earlier. But I feel like this next episode is going to have even more of that mixed in with Infected as well. So yeah, I really can't wait for this next episode. The fact that we get it on Friday is really good. It means that everyone can just watch Rihanna perform, not to worry about anything. Just really looking forward to it. And this was solid. I mean, I can't say this was better than the last episode. I really can't, but it is a setup episode, and it's not maybe going to do as much as all the previous episodes have. But I guarantee the next episode is gonna kind of blow this one out of the water. And like you said, George, because you have seen them, I then can't wait to watch these both together side by side. And I think that might make me appreciate this even more than I do. But as it is in this series, it's probably like an 8.5 out of 10 episode. Nothing really wrong with it. And bring on Friday.
Definitely. And that's what I'm looking forward to. And that's what I'm looking forward to you watching as well. Chaz, I'm looking forward to Sam and Emily great in the game. I like what I see from the show based on next week's trailer. Exactly that. What I'm going to do, I'm going to watch episode 5 on Saturday or Sunday. I'm going to watch episode 5, but then on Monday after work, I will do 4 and 5 back to back ahead of the spoiler discussion, because they do work really well as a duo arc with one another without giving anything away at all. Those two side by side make for really good entertainment. And as you said, it's not last week, but I think from where the show went last week, it needed to be so different this week. It needs to not get on track, but the road adventure, traveling, spending time out in a new city, you needed that. And I think they delivered with that as a whole. Giving my thoughts on this episode, but that's going to kind of wrap up my thoughts on episode 4 of The Last of Us. Please hold my hand. Hold to my hand. Apologize, I did get it wrong earlier. I've corrected it on YouTube. It sounds a lot better now. That too makes all the difference. But as we said, and everyone that's been commenting throughout, thank you all for commenting. If you're watching later on, comment below. Let us know your thoughts. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe you're watching it much further into the future and you've seen episode 5 already. We're excited to hear your thoughts on that. We'll be live next Monday with another spoiler discussion. It gives you all the weekend to watch it. We're not going to be cutting things shorter to get an episode out sooner. We're going to go live on Monday night. This is the sort of slot we have. If you're really desperate for something, I have one of those pre-recorded short things, which I'm going to upload. They were all recorded on the same day when I binge-watched the entire series. So for anyone that's feeling that he's wearing the same top and hoodie in that's why. Because
he's looking progressively more weary.
I know the bags
looking
get
worse.
It's like, I think when you get to a crying episode, you can get bloodshot eyes of mine. So it's like one of those person takes photos of himself every day for 15 years montages, but it's 8 hours and it's deterioration from
George ages 10 years in 8 hours.
Oh, it is. So yeah, if you want a minute thought, check that out. That will go up at 3 a.m. when it finishes airing. I can't remember how long episode 5 actually is. It's not an hour and 20.
But I think it might be 50 to 55 minutes maybe. So I'll need to double check that online. But as you said, if you liked this video, so if you liked this discussion, so we like doing these live, we like getting you involved, we like getting people's thoughts on them, do hit that subscribe button because we've got a lot more Last of Us videos to do. As we said, we're on episode 4 out of 9. And here's a question to pose for you all at home. The Last of Us is going to move one episode because of the Super Bowl, and we know that America shuts down for the Super Bowl. You know, we are based in the UK, but we all know that. Will the Oscars... Sorry, I should have run around. Will The Last of Us change its finale season airing date because of the Oscars? Because they'll be happening at the same exact time on Sunday, March the 12th. I think no, but if the viewing figures are a big hit on Friday, I wouldn't put it past them. But Last of Us is bigger than the Oscars based off those numbers. Anyway, but it's a good question, right?
No, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of conversation in recent years, especially with social media being at its peak more than it ever was, about awards shows and about discourse about how relevant they really are. It was one thing in the 1950s for the Oscars, for example, when that was the be-all and end-all, that was the pinnacle of everything. For some people, that's still the case. I'm kind of indifferent about the whole thing. I don't really mind it, but also I understand why people are against it. But I think you see a lot nowadays, viewing figures for these award ceremonies go down. So it does feel like it wouldn't necessarily affect the Last of Us viewership, especially when they can watch things simultaneously. You can have something on the TV whilst you're watching something else on the phone. Are you getting a live feed of what's going on your phone? So there's ways around that. I think the Super Bowl is its own juggernaut, and it's seen by people around the world. It's not just, obviously it's massive in America, but I mean, I know a lot of places here, people book days off work here to watch it the Mondays all the time. People stay up late for the halftime show. I might be doing that.
I do for the trailers.
And the trailers. I mean, there is something for everyone here, whereas the Oscars is really for people who just want to know that, I guess. So in any case, I don't think it will be moved, but we'll see what happens. And yeah, you're right. If Friday is a success, they might just do it anyway, just because they may want to do that. It could be a good idea, actually. I mean, it gives people all weekend to kind of digest what happens.
Yeah, is that like Sunday night's the prime TV slot of entertainment, isn't it? And it's, I mean, I know in the UK I don't watch Happy Valley, but that was the Sunday night thing here for a while.
Yeah.
That's finished now, and it is always interesting. Some shows are better on other days. Doctor Who was always Saturday, like tea time here. It's interesting how scheduling works, but that pristine HBO Sunday night slot. We know Succession's back at the end of March. There's a show after Succession. They've got 3 juggernauts back to back to back. Last of Us, Succession, I forgot the third one. And it does make it more interesting. I don't think they'll move the episode for the Oscars, but I'd love someone to win an Oscar and be like, I'd rather be at home watching The Last of Us, I'll be honest.
That would be so good.
It would be incredible. It'd be the best marketing
into existence.
Exactly. And imagine if Pedro's up for an Oscar. That'd be something.
Oh,
next year, best short film, he will be there because they are doing a short film, which I forgot the name of, being directed. I'm just waffling at this point. Pedro Pascal, I hope catch him on Saturday Night Live. But aside from commenting your thoughts on Pedro Pascal and people that keep thirsting over him, you can follow us on social medias where we don't post Pedro Pascal fan cams. Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. We have a link to Red Bull where you can pick up any merch if you want to help support the channel. Aside from that, it's a very busy time of year. We've been talking about the Oscars for a while. We had our Fableman's review drop on Saturday. We're moving away from the Oscars for Wednesday because we've got the James Cameron retrospective, and we have True Lies airing this Wednesday, the 8th of February. And the James Cameron retrospective is going to round out on Sunday with the Titanic. That'll be a live stream. Sam, I believe, will be joining me on that, but we'll have more details, as always, on our social medias because Titanic's back out in IMAX 3D 4K high frame rate this weekend, if that wasn't already a mouthful for you. You can watch James Cameron's 2 box office behemoths as Titanic and Avatar scrap over being the 3rd highest grossing film in history because James Cameron has a license to print money and he can do whatever the fuck he wants because he's James Cameron. That is what we have learned at this point in time. So this is going to end the review. Thank you all for watching. Take care, and we'll join you on the next one.